I'm back with Dr. Timothy Ball. He's one of the leading voices challenging the mainstream conclusions about the impact of global warming. Before the break, we were going through some of the facts. One of the other facts that supporters of the global warming theory put forth is that the polar ice caps are melting. People have physically gone there and seen it, measured water levels. What do you say to that?
Well, it's all part of the deception. Basically what's happening is they're reporting to the people natural events and telling you they're unnatural.
So you agree that they are melting, but it's not necessarily
No, I'm not agreeing they're melting. What I'm going to tell you is that the Arctic ice forms every winter about 16 million square kilometers, and every summer about 10 million square kilometers melt. And we've only been recording it with satellites since 1980. We started in 78, but effectively since 80. And there has been a slight decline over that period because the world was warming. Nobody's ever denied that. But this winter, for example, when they were predicting that there would be massive decline, this winter is back to above the long-term or the normal for that period of time. The Antarctic ice is increasing in size and volume. So this is all part of... They tend to pick areas that they know the public don't know anything about and that are sound potentially threatening. And of course, one of the things with melting glaciers, I say to the people, well, what's wrong with warming? And they really can't give you an answer. And then after a while, they'll say, oh, the sea level's going to rise because the glaciers are going to melt. That's why Gore made it such a big part of his movie. And then, of course, you can add to that the polar bears are going to drown and all the other emotional stuff. But the reality is that what's going on now is well within natural variability of long-term climate.
Well, what you point out is I think, one of the most critical points in my mind, that the public... Most of us are not scientists, right? And we're kind of sitting on the sidelines watching you guys duke it out. And, if I watch a hockey game, I sort of know what icing is and I know the rules. I don't know the rules of engagement with you and other scientists. So it's very difficult for us. This year in Vancouver in the Olympics, it was much, much, much warmer than certainly many years in the past. A lot of people said, there's proof of global warming. Then you go to the East Coast and it's freezing cold. And so how do you guys engage in a more constructive way so that we in the public and in the media can understand this?
Well, there has been no constructive debate. That's the problem. In fact, part of the campaign by the people at the CRU, the leaked emails, was how they shut people down. They controlled the peer review process, what articles got published. So they could come out and say, well, the majority of the articles are. Well, yeah, they even got an editor fired because he dared to publish an article that raised questions. That was Sayers at the Geophysical Research Letters. And this is part of a letter we put to Harper, 60 of us signed in 2002, saying, look, let's get all the facts on the table. Let's have the true debate. What these people have done is effectively block science. Science works by theory or hypothesis. And they say, well, if, so those are the assumptions, then this may happen. So the theory of global warming was that CO2 traps heat. If it increases, the temperature will rise, and the CO2 will increase because humans are producing more. That became fact almost instantly. Whereas
not exactly instantly.
Well,
I mean, people have been putting forward global warming for several decades now, and I mean, it really was Al Gore's film really was the sort of catalyst that brought it to the living room, to the dining room,
to the living room. But already by that time, because I watched what these people were doing, I knew what was going on at CRU. They were already effectively blocking the scientific method, which is to be a skeptic. As Karl Popper says, you falsify, you try to prove the theory is wrong. You don't try to prove it's right, which is what they were doing. And so they've actually blocked science. Now what's happening, of course, is that gradually the evidence starts to creep out, and despite their attempts to block science and publications, for example, the critical one where they say if temperature goes up, the CO2 will rise, the evidence shows exactly the opposite. The ice core records, which they touted back in 1991, as, here's the proof, here's the temperature going up, and here's the CO2, they all agree now that the temperature changes before the CO2. So the fundamental assumption is wrong. It's like with Einstein, who said that a key to his theory was that nothing can go faster than the speed of light. It's as if you then found something going faster than the speed of light, which, by the way, is going on. Because you notice that Einstein's theory is 105 years old this year. Global warming is still a very, very new theory, but as I said, they've effectively blocked the science.
Well, but then you, for instance, you've been on Glenn Beck's show and other shows that are clearly partisan. Doesn't that undermine your argument and your credibility that this is a scientific issue and not a partisan issue? I mean, because it seems like, for the most part, the people who are attacking global warming theories are coming from one particular political spectrum, and the ones supporting it are coming from a different spectrum.
That's what they've turned it into.
Yeah.
They've turned it into, well, if you agree with it, then you're liberal or left-wing, and if you oppose it, you're right-wing and conservative. And they made it. But all that, for me, is proof of how political this issue has become.
But then why would you agree, for instance, to go out on Glenn Beck? Why not go on Larry King? Maybe Larry King didn't invite you.
But exactly. Larry King, the CBC wouldn't have me on. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was one of the things I was proud of, was that the Standard agreed to have me on a couple of years ago, and I commend the program for that. They at least try to get some balance into the argument. And that's all I've ever asked for, is a debate on the issue. Well, there was only one side of it that would present the issue. But by the way, I got to tell you, there are scientists I know who agree with the skeptic side of it, but won't admit that publicly, because they said immediately that happens, I, as a socialist, am branded as a conservative, and I don't want that. Mm. So that's the degree to which this kind of pigeonholing a measure of politics of the issue.
We just have another minute before break, and we'll have more time afterwards. But help us understand the Himalayan glacier issue. That was one of the things that was put forward by the IPCC report, that Himalayan glaciers are melting. That has just recently been retracted. What happened, and what's your take on it?
Well, what happened was that there's three parts to the IPCC. There's the science part, which tries to show that CO2, human CO2, and their definition of climate change is only those changes caused by human activity. So they're very narrowly focused. But then there's two working groups. One look at the impact of climate change, and the third looks at how do we deal with that. Well, the group that we're looking at the impact wanted to show that this is already happening and it's extreme. So they're going around the world looking for evidence to say, and it turned out that this person had said in an interview that the glaciers in the Himalayas are all going to be gone by 2035. That got picked up. There was no articles published, no science on it whatsoever, but it got picked up and put into the report. And of course, to me, it was a measure of how desperate they were to find examples to show people. In fact, of the world's glaciers, we're only monitoring 10% of them, and 50% are growing and 50% are declining. So it's not an issue at all. And not only that, by the way, but the scientists that made those comments worked for the chairman of the IPCC, Pachauri. So there was political connections and monetary connections here as well. But it was a measure of how desperate they were to get the public convinced, the glaciers are all melting, the sea level is going to rise, the end of the world is nigh, you better listen to us, which is part of the fear game that's played, that then goes with their knowing that the public don't understand the science and the facts, so they can get away with this kind of scientific nonsense.
Well, let's stop there for a moment. You do acknowledge that the world is heating up. You deny that it's man-made, but there are obviously lots of efforts to reduce carbon emissions. Curious, after the break, what your thoughts are on all of the efforts that are being made right now. Short break, and then we're back with Dr. Timothy Ball.